Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, back with another Warpforge video, and today I am looking at the 5 cost cards in Warpforge, and I'm going to bring you my top 10, continuing the series that I've been doing. If you've not seen the other videos in this series, I've already done the ones for the 3 drops and also for the 4 energy cost cards as well, so go and check them out. So yeah, as I say before, these are just my opinion. Obviously, if you've got a different thought, then let me know in the comments. Be good to kind of compare notes. So let's dive on in. So first of all, in 10th place, I had a few kind of contenders for this slot. I like the Zone Throat, for example. That was one of the contenders, but I've actually decided to go with the Devilfish for my number 10 slot. Now, the Devilfish isn't necessarily, I don't know that it's necessarily found its home yet in its like the perfect sort of Tau deck. But if you just take this card on its own for what it is, it's a very, very, very powerful card, right? So for the 5 energy, we obviously have 5 health, which isn't amazing, but it's okay. But obviously having the 1 armor really makes the difference. That makes this pretty good defensively. Does have 5 range attack too, so we can trade quite evenly with cards around this power level. And it's, you know, its weakness of melee attack 3 still not bad, right? Like in the early game, having 3 still doing considerable damage. But the big thing about the Devilfish is obviously its ability for friendly infantry and drones to suddenly gain flank is very, very powerful. We all know how good the Orc Knob is, for example, in the Orcs. Giving flank to all further units is a massive threat, and your opponent just has to deal with it. So the Devilfish is like a really, really high power ceiling. Of course, your opponent is going to have those games where he just kills it outright, but it's a really high pressure unit. It essentially might as well have Vanguard, because unless your opponent can just kill you, they have to target this unit to get rid of it. So it's a very, very strong card. And as I say, it hasn't quite found the perfect deck yet, but I actually think once it does, it's we're going to see just how good that card is. Okay, so in 9th place, I'm actually going to bounce to the Orcs, and I'm going to go with one of my favourite cards from the Gordrang expansion, which is the Boss Knob. Now, when I always remember when I first reviewed this card, I wasn't that impressed. I didn't think it was going to be that good, and then I actually started using it, and oh my god, it just right from the start, it just felt good. So what have we got for 5 energy? We've got the 6 health. Remember, it's that magic thing of having 1 health higher than the energy cost, which I always talk about. And again, decent stats. It's a mob ability. It's got 5 melee attack itself. It's got 3 range. It's not too bad. Obviously, a slight weakness in the sense that the 6 energy cost flankers with high range attack can kind of trade and take this out quite well. That's its biggest weakness, but otherwise it's not too bad in the stats department. But of course, the big thing with the Boss Knob is it's not just really a tempo card. It's not about playing it on 5. What I love about this card is you kind of play it when the situation's right, when the board state is good, for you to essentially get multiple attacks and trigger its mob ability. And what that says is give 1 health to adjacent units. Now remember guys, your Warlord is a unit. So of course, what this guy is essentially a healer for our war boss. And when you combine that with things like Grizzled Scarboy and things like Ghazghkull having 40 health, that is a massive, massive deal, and it's a key card in opening up the kind of control archetypes and the late game Orc decks that really want to be able to go deep into the game. So this card is fantastic in practice. It also can do things like, for example, buff the other unit that's next to it, which might be things like the Orc Knob, right? So the Orc Knob, which is already a high pressure unit because it's giving other units flank, you suddenly have that guy next to this guy, and it just creates this, which one do they get rid of, because they need to kill both those cards. So I think this is a really powerful card, and it opens up archetypes, and that's why it's in my top 10. In 8th place, I'm actually going to bounce to the Eldar. I'm going to talk about the spirits here. I just think for 5 energy, this card has been good for a long time now. Now, it does require you to have 2 Spirit Stones to really get the value out of this. And without those 2 stones, it's a very average card. It's not a bad card, 5/5 with a Waystone, but it's not great. However, if you do have the 2 stones, I think it's superb, because what this gives you is a really good tempo play. So not only do you get the Spirit Seer, but of course the Wraith Guard. And the fact that the Wraith Guard has Vanguard, right? So you're getting, you look at the 5 plus the 4 health, that's 9 health worth of stats that you're getting for 5 energy. And that in itself, when half of it is a Vanguard, is very, very powerful. In 8th place, I am actually going to go... Oh no, that was 8th place, the Spirits here. So in 7th place, I am going to go with a card that I talk about all the time in the tournaments, and that is the Carnifex. This card is just... first of all, it's a common card, so everybody gets it from the start. And this card is just a really solid statted card. Now, with new releases and new factions and things, other cards are starting to catch the Carnifex up now. So it's not quite as standout as it once felt. But I just think on 5, being able to drop this guy with his 6 health and give him armor. 6 health and armor for 5 energy is a really sticky unit. And one thing about Warpforge is units don't stick very easily. Like the back and forth trading and killing of units and troops is very common. The Carnifex is a real exception to that, and it's really crucial to a strategy like the Tyrannies employ, right? Because they're trying to build a board, they're trying to get units to stick, and it can kind of like play stealth stratagems and synapse and buff health and all that. And the Carnifex is just the perfect catalyst for that. So a super sticky, super solid unit with pretty good stats even on the offense, with like that 4/4 on either side, and of course just the flexibility of being able to choose. Like I say, I always take the armor, but every now and again it could be correct to to sort of present more range attack or melee. Sometimes I do that if I'm getting close to lethal, for example, and I want to make it more of an offensive problem for your opponent. So yeah, really good flexibility. Carnifex is a fantastic card. So my number 6th on the top 10 actually goes to a Black Legion card, and that card is Fine Black Legion. Yeah, so I'm actually going to go with the Bringer of Decay. Bringer of Decay is 5 energy, it comes with 5 health and 5/4 on the offense stat, so pretty kind of like not the best stats on a 5-drop, but certainly very solid stats, right? So very hard to kind of like get away from this, and because it's got enemies have vulnerable, whenever they trade into the Bringer itself, they suffer that vulnerability. So in many ways, you could think of this having 6 melee attack and 5 range attack, which is actually suddenly very, very good. The vulnerable ability is superb in the Black Legion because we have things like Traitor's Hate, which does 2 damage to everything. Suddenly that would do 3 damage to everything. The fact that he makes the enemy Warlord vulnerable. So the fact that your Warlord attacking goes from essentially having 2 damage to 3 damage because of the vulnerable. So the combination that Bringer of Decay has with other cards is what makes this super powerful. And the fact that it's on E5 means that, you know, the next turn you've got access to things like the Helldrake strike, so you can AoE and have a vulnerable 1 on top of the damage dealt. So yeah, overall it's just a very, very solid card. It should be in pretty much every, and it usually is, in every Black Legion deck. Okay, so that is the Bringer of Decay. So on to the top 5. So in 5th place, going back to the Aeldari, and I'm actually going to talk about one of their legendary cards, which is the Striking Scorpion Xact. Now, this guy is a powerhouse, right? This guy is obviously, you're dropping him and he's got stealth, so your opponent can't take him out, so you always get to have the jump. Should survive with 4 health and stealth, to be honest. There's a few things that can take him out, like no mucking about, but very few things in the game. And what the Scorpion essentially then does is when you get to attack in your turn, is he does a shed load of damage. So if you think about the 4 melee attack, he also has Shuriken 4, so he's going to do 4 damage before he even goes into trade mode. Often he can kill a unit and not even get hit back. But obviously that means he can do up to 8 damage. If you're playing Zephyr Blade, you may use the Warlord power to give him an extra 1, so he'd have Shuriken 5. So this guy's a real damage dealer, great at taking out big units, trading up, and also very, very good at pressuring your opponent, which a lot of good Eldar decks do exactly that, right? They play tempo, and this guy, once this guy's down, you're like really worried, because this guy's going to take a massive chunk of health off your opponent's Warlord if he gets to hit there, and put you into lethal range. So a very, very solid all-round 5-drop. Another trick that you can do is you can play this guy on 5, and then on 6 you can actually play the the 4-drop legendary on the jet bike that basically makes it invulnerable if it trades and doesn't die. So there's some really good combos and synergies with other cards as well. Next up, we have got in 4th place, yeah, we're going to go with one of the new cards onto the Adeptus Sororitas. We're going to go with Aeldari. Now, Aeldari Thurga has just come out, and she is a powerhouse. She's such a solid 5-drop, guys. She's exactly what you want in terms of a body in the mid-range, the 6 health, the stats that are kind of around the 5 mark. Very hard to cheat there. And it says, when a friendly unit prays, give it shield. Also, when Aeldari prays, the next turn, give +1 health to your units. So she's a superb defensive card. Your Warlord can benefit immediately. So she's going to help you to generate faith points because you drop her down, your Warlord prays. He's now got a shield on him, so it's really hard to disrupt the prayer. Can trade for free. And, you know, the pressure, it's another one of those 5-drops, a bit like the Devilfish. When you play Aeldari, your opponent is going to do everything to get rid of this card. And just that in itself has value. So she'll have turns where she just causes that kind of panic and eventually gets removed. She'll have other games where she just goes off, pretty much wins you the game. So that's Aeldari in 4th place. So on to the top 3. Now, in 3rd place, I thought long and hard about this, and I do think the Lich Guard is worthy of the top 3. Lich Guard's gone up and down in terms of nerfs and buffs, and you know, who knows, maybe there'll be more adjustments to be made. But one of the good things about the Lich Guard is it's a real kind of like linchpin in the Necron deck, because kind of base the kind of control idea around this card. It's just this really, really hard to get rid of defensive card with the armor 2. And the big difference between this and say like the Tyranid 1 or any of the other sort of vanguards with armor is the fact that it's a remnant. And obviously having remnant means that your opponent can spend a lot of resources trying to get through this thing, this big chunky defensive unit, only for it to just be raised again to full health. That is super powerful. Then you add to the fact that there's things like go into your graveyard and pick a unit that's died and play it again, you know, so you can, like the reconstruction protocol, for example. And then you've got obviously the ultimate, which is the Tomb World, which plays 5 units that have died this game. So the Lich Guard is like a key to all of those strategies. It means there's a lot of flexibility around the card. There's a lot of ways to kind of abuse it, if you like. And that's what makes it so powerful. Definitely deserving of one of the top 5 energy cost cards in the game of Warpforge. Now in 2nd place, I'm actually going to also go back to our newest faction, the Adeptus Sororitas, for the Divine Intervention. I wouldn't argue with someone saying that this would be lower in the list. So for example, this could be my number 10 or my number 9. But I've actually got it at number 2. And the reason I've gone for number 2 is that the 5 energy is essentially destroy the highest troop, which is what you want to do with hard removal, right? You always pretty much want to remove the highest, the biggest, baddest unit on your opponent's side. So it's kind of got that no mucking about feel, because if that unit is in stealth, for example, then this will still kill that. So to me, it's kind of like it's already on par with no mucking about. No mucking about was in my top 10 just as a top 10 4-drops, just for its destroy ability. Now, where Divine Intervention and why I've got it as my number 2 5-drop in the game is because the upside, the ceiling, if you like, the added benefit, which admittedly is very, very hard to pull off, right? We're talking about how you've got to have 8 faith for this to happen. But the ability that it has, which is to destroy all enemy troops, doesn't touch your own troops like the Will of Gork does from the Orcs. It just destroys your enemy troops. That ability is so unique in the game that doesn't exist anywhere else, and it is so powerful and game winning that I can't point to another 5-drop that can have that kind of effect on the game, that kind of impact. Well, maybe there's one other card that we're going to talk about, but very few and far between can a card have that kind of effect. And quite honestly, there's very few cards that cost more than 5 energy that have that kind of effect on the game. And that's what makes this just such a supremely powerful. Now, are you always going to get that off? No. Very often you're going to use this to just simply destroy a single troop with the highest attack. And that's okay. That's really good anyway. But obviously, if we get that, if we manage to get that 8 faith and get this high ceiling, we've basically got ourselves a win condition for the entire game. And that's why I've got it as my number 2 5-drop. Alright, so drum roll, on to the best 5-drop in Warpforge, in my opinion. And that is the Grizzled Scarboy. Now, most of you know, I'm a little bit biased. I am a big fan of the Orcs. I've played them to death, and I think I was one of the original people to create the sort of Orc fatigue control decks. And if you've not seen that video guide, go back and watch it. The Grizzled Scarboy is a fantastic 5-drop. And in my opinion, it's my number 1 because it actually opened up an archetype. This really did transform how Orcs played control. Prior to this coming out, we used to play Gruck, used to rely on kind of like his card draw, and kind of going quite low in his health and then trying to come back, and it was on a knife edge. Grizzled Scarboy allowed us to play a really good kind of Gazgul or even Gordrang control deck and play it in a different way. And the reason is that it allows the game to go deep into the late game. So the fact that it transformed the game, it transformed the meta. Uriel at the time was rank 1, and then this came along and it transformed the meta, and the Orc control became the meta. So it had such a huge impact on the game and transformed not just a faction or a meta, but it actually created a new archetype, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so powerful. And what it does is, obviously for 5 energy, it gives armor 1 to your warlord, but it also gives 2 health for each damaged enemy. So it's a combination of heal and protection for the rest of the game. The reason why this card is so powerful, the kind of unwritten strength of this card, is it almost needs to say, and it's in the Orc faction. Because what you can do, for example, is play Grizzled Scarboy on sort of like E5 or E6, and then play another one on sort of E6 or E7, and then you can just Will of Gork on E8. So the fact that the weakness of this card is that you're losing tempo in playing it, it doesn't matter when you've got cards like Will of Gork, because Will of Gork just clears the board, and then you're at reset, but now you've got the buffed health and you've got the buffed armor. So it's a really, really game-changing card. It's a lot of fun to use, especially if you do like control decks, and that's why this is my number 1 5-drop in the game of Warpforge. So there you go, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. What would your top 10 look like? Any other things that I've said here that you agree or slightly disagree that you'd move up or down? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button for me and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And of course, we will be continuing the series and looking next at probably the 6 energy cost drops soon. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves.